Hey everybody, Gromlos here with another short Star Citizen video. Well, there are good news. The invites for the multiplayer part of the dogfight module have started to roll out. Sadly, I don't have my invite to the PvP part of the game yet, but I hope I will be in soon. As of the making of this video, the first 20,000 backers or so have access to the PvP, and the number increases steadily. My ID is in the mid 50,000s, so I hope I will not have to wait much longer till I can show you some PvP gameplay. Anyway, in my last Star Citizen video I have promised that I will take a closer look at the different control modes in Star Citizen, and I finally got around to doing that. So in this video I will tell you about one of the three modes which you can toggle on and off in Star Citizen's intelligent flight control system, and what toggling them off and on will do. The three modes are called Coupled, G-Safe and Comstat. In this video we will take a look at the coupled and decoupled mode. But first let's take a look at some basics of the flight models in Star Citizen real quick. Now, as I've already mentioned last time, even though Star Citizen's fighting and flying is of course more action-orientated, it is based on a real physics engine. That means that the craft in the game should behave according to physics in space. However, the flight control system itself will impose limits on what the spaceship can do for gameplay reasons. So in the standard mode, with all the flight control modes enabled, the computer will try to make the ship behave somewhat like you knew from the old space games like Wing Commander or the X-Wing games. It will try to mimic an atmospheric flight to a certain point. The difference between Star Citizen and those older games is that in those older games there was no real physics behind that. If you pulled back on the stick, the ship turned to a certain rate simply because it said so in the setting files within the game. In Star Citizen, the fighters won't just magically do what you want for no reason. The flight computer needs to control the maneuvering thrusters correctly to get the desired maneuver. So, like in flight simulators, Star Citizen does have a real flight model for the different spacecraft, just that instead of simulating the aerodynamics of wings and control surfaces to make the vehicle do what you expect it to do, it simulates control of the thrusters. Now, as I have said, for gameplay reasons, the game's fights are more action-based after all, there are some limits to what the flight computer will let you do. For example, a spacecraft would of course not have a speed limit like an airplane does. As long as the engine runs, it would accelerate. However, there is a speed limit for the spacecraft in Star Citizen. The way this works is simply that the computer will cut your engine once your maximum speed is reached. The different modes of the flight control system will modify what the computer lets you do. Now let's take a look at the most interesting and important one, Decoupled Mode, also sometimes called Newtonian mode. You can see if decoupled mode is active on the HUD on the left of the crosshair. If coupled is crossed out, you are in decoupled mode. Now, decoupled mode is what lets you do maneuvers in Star Citizen that are more typical for spacecraft and are only possible in space. The kind of flying you may know from watching the Battlestar Galactica TV show or playing older, more simulator-oriented space games like iWar. So, decoupled mode lifts some of the restrictions the flight control system usually imposes on you, but also brings one or two new ones with it. In order to get everything out of your fighter, you will need to switch between the modes as the situation requires, which is something I like. Now, there are two basic things the decoupled mode lets you do. First, you will be able to turn your craft while still keeping your initial velocity vector up. So, let's say you fly with 100 meters per second in one direction. Now you can go into decoupled mode and you will continue on this vector with this speed, but you can turn around and fire backwards or to the sides. Now, the second thing decoupled mode will let you do compared to coupled is it will let you strafe up, down, to the sides as well as back and forward. So you can, for example, charge through an enemy formation, go decoupled, turn around while still flying away from them and fire at them, while at the same time strafing up or down, left or right to avoid incoming fire. That would be the traditional use of this ability in a game, but by far not the only one. You could also, for example, stop behind an asteroid or a bigger moving ship and use Strafe to pop up behind it and take cover again after taking a few shots. For example, imagine you're teamed up with a larger ship, like a Constellation, and it is flying with say 70 meters per second. You could follow directly behind it at the same speed in a fighter and then go decoupled and use the larger ship with its stronger shields as cover, and then use Strafe to pop up from behind this moving cover to take shots. Or turn around and cover the rear of the larger ship while flying backwards at the same direction than the bigger ship. Almost like an extra turret of the Constellation that is not actually connected to it, just flying along at the same speed. Here it gets a little bit complicated though, because when it comes to the strafing, the flight computer will limit a few things again. First of all, while you can strafe in all directions in decoupled mode, you are limited to half your ship's top speed in delta V in every direction, up, down, left, right, forward and backwards. Now, what does that mean? Well, delta V means the change in velocity. So if you say fly with 50 meters per second and you accelerate till you reach 100 meters per second, your delta V is 50 meters per second. So a Hornet, for example, has a top speed without afterburner of 100 meters per second in Star Citizen, and it will get 50 meters of delta V in every direction in decoupled mode with the normal strafing. A ship with 80 meters per second top speed without burners would get 40 meters per second. There are two exceptions to this rule though. First, you can't exceed the speed limit of the craft, so if you already fly with 100 meters per second in a Hornet, you are at the speed limit, you can't strafe forward to reach 150. If you fly 50 meters per second and switch to decoupled, you can reach 100 by strafing forward in the same direction than you initially were flying. Now, if you fly 100 meters per second and you strafe backwards using the S key, you can only go down to 50 meters per second. You can't stop this way, because the computer will only give you 50 meters of delta V, which isn't enough to cancel out the 100 meters per second that you were initially flying. If you are flying faster than that in decoupled mode and you want to stop, you will need to use the space brake or Newtonian brake, which is the spacebar by default. That will stop all movement of the ship and is therefore the second exception, because it can exceed the normal delta V limitations of decoupled mode and get you to a full stop from full speed. Now, another thing about decoupled mode is that the flight computer will stop all movement other than the initial velocity vector as soon as you release the button. So, if you use the D key to strafe to the right, it will only do so as long as you keep the button pressed, and use the thrusters to stop the movement to the right as soon as the button is released. Well then, that's an overview of the capabilities and limitations of decoupled mode in its current form. Now, I already mentioned the most common use for this mode, firing back while flying in the opposite direction. But especially in combination with the normal coupled mode, this is by far not the only move you can pull, and we will see what people come up with to use this capability. Now, there is one small example of a maneuver I wanted to try using this since a while. Over half a year ago, the Anvil Hornet trailer was released on the RSI YouTube channel. A very cool trailer. If you have not seen it, I would recommend checking it out. Anyway, in this short video, there was a scene where the Hornet is chased by a 300i. The Hornet pretty much hits the E-brake and the 300i overshoots and ends up in front of the Hornet's guns. A cool move that looks really impressive. However, that was of course at a time before we have seen actual gameplay. So me and others wondered back then, well, that looks cool and all, but can you actually do it in the game as well? And that is what I want to try. Now, some of you might say, why do you need decoupled mode for this? If you're just decelerating, you can do that without decoupled mode. Well, yes, but the thing is that fighters in Star Citizen all decelerate pretty fast, so there is a good chance that a pilot behind you can stop fast enough to prevent an overshoot and stay behind you, especially if he uses the automatic to match target velocity. So, just slowing down or even stopping is in my opinion not good enough to pull this off. You actually need to go backwards, and for that you need decoupled mode. Now, the move I want to do looks simple enough, but it does require a bit of finger acrobatics to pull it off properly. I want to accelerate backwards and at the same time strafe upwards or downwards a bit, because I don't want to fly straight into the guy behind me and crash. So, What I need to do is go to Decoupled Mode, press space for the Newtonian brake and S to strafe backwards. Remember, strafing backwards alone at this speed will not give me enough delta V to go backwards. I need the brake, which gets me 0 meters per second, and from there the S key makes me strafe back with up to 50 meters per second in the Hornet. At the same time I press E to strafe up, and then go into coupled again and hopefully chase the target as it overshot me. Well, that looks promising so far, but let's find out if it works against something a little bit more threatening than a space rock. In my case that means Vandul, because I don't have access to the PvP mode yet. Of course the maneuver would need further testing once I get into PvP, but for now let's see how the AI opponents react. So, here I am chasing one Vandal Hunter as I receive hits from the rear. I select a new target, a fighter 100 meters behind me, and then I go decoupled, press space followed by S and then E, and there he is in front of my guns. So, as you can see, it seems to work almost like in the trailer, at least against AI targets. We will see if you can surprise human opponents with this as well. Anyway, I wanted to try this since I saw the Hornet trailer for the first time, and I'm quite happy that it seems to work. The target has to be pretty close though, 100 meters seems to work fine. If the opponent is 200 or above away, it will take a bit too long to overshoot, and probably give him too much time to shoot at you. Depends on the ships involved though. I tested it in the Aurora as you can see, which has a lower top speed and a lower acceleration than the Hornet. I think in a Hornet you can pull it off at longer distances, because it decelerates faster and can fly backwards faster than the Aurora. Well, that was just one example for what you can do with the decoupled mode in combination with the normal coupled mode. And this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining and informative. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.